Kia ora, Shannon. Thank you very much for being here. Much appreciated. I realize it's been an incredibly busy week for you guys. You had Hikoi mō te tiriti at the beginning of the week. You had the introduction of the Treaty Principles Bill into Parliament yesterday. I guess the first question is, kei te pēhea koe, how are you holding up?
It's always good to come home, right? But it's mixed emotions, I guess. When I reflect on the past week, we started with the apology for children in state care, so that sort of started what was set to be quite a heavy week. And our aroha goes out to those survivors, and then to move through to see the Hikoi forming up, more and more people joining along the way, but the absolute support for that kaupapa. That's significant for Aotearoa. I think it's significant and reflective of how people are feeling at the moment. And many of my own community in North Coast joined the Hikoi and went over the bridge, to be thousands and thousands of people supporting the Hikoi mō te tiriti. And not only Māori, but Pākehās and every ethnic group I think was represented in there. So that's really special. And I guess when it landed in the House yesterday, there was a bit of anxiety. I think for politicians, there's a little bit of political excitement, but the opportunity to demonstrate that resistance collectively between us as Labour, the Greens, Te Pāti Māori. It's the first kaupapa since we've been opposition that I think we've really formed that relationship, consensus. And yesterday we were able to demonstrate in the House the power of opposition, but the power of our parties when it comes to significant kaupapa like this.
That's actually one of the things I really like around how you guys have approached the communications with what's going on in opposition. It's a joint effort. Like there's press releases that have been put out, there's videos that have been put out together. How much of an undertaking is it to get the three parties who obviously have different perspectives on things to work together on something that's so really important to the country?
I think that we're still learning how to be effective opposition. We're in this place of Parliament where you have to work independently as parties. But when such destructive, divisive, and detrimental policy comes before us, kaupapa overrides politics. And so that was the opportunity. It made it easy, I think, for our parties to come together to work on our common agenda there. And when it came to something that really, really matters for our country and people, we did the mahi together and we got on with it. But it was also what people wanted to see. That they wanted, the message has been really clear from King Tuheitia right from the start. We must unite. Kotahitanga is key. And so that applies to us as politicians, and that's what we did. And, it was fantastic to end collectively with the hakatautoko yesterday.
So you took part in that. I know not a lot of people would have seen it because of the way that the camera angles are
and
facing
that's okay.
in Parliament.
It's been a long time since I did a haka.
Well, I was going to say, what was going through your head when that happened?
It was therapeutic for one. That one of the biggest challenges as a politician is sitting there and listening to effectively what Seymour was reading out in his speech. You feel the pain of those around you that this legislation hurts, the fear, the anxiety, and for me, the anti-Māori agenda since this government came into play has been incredibly destructive for our people and communities. So, a haka is an opportunity to let it out, and in a respectful way. It's a haka, but it's a respectful practice to add value to the speeches that were had there and to demonstrate our resistance to this.
Is the gallery built for so many people performing a haka all at once?
it's got good bones, that gallery, I think, but it certainly hasn't been seen like that before. Um, it wasn't just for us, it was the people that were standing in there, that they had to sit silently throughout that whole process, which was about an hour. The speaker said right from the start that, if anyone is disruptive, the whole gallery will be removed. And that could have gone two ways yesterday, right? But, how gracious they all were standing in that gallery, and they're all raising their hands silently instead of doing applause. So the haka at the end was an opportunity for the people, the public, to join in and to show David Seymour that we absolutely do not support this bill. I mean, the bill doesn't have support from anyone in Parliament apart from the ACT Party, but as much pressure that we applied on both the Prime Minister and to National Party MPs, we really wanted them to demonstrate some leadership, to show some action and vote against the bill. We've said that it is unnecessary, it's expensive, it's going to be a painful 6 months, and it still means that we have to hear all of those submissions and then also come back and do a second reading. So it's not going to be nice for anyone. If they thought through the politics, there's only one kaupapa happening in the media at the moment, and that is the Treaty Principles Bill. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that that's not what the government wants to be focused on at the moment, and it's taking oxygen away from any other work that they are doing. So that works for us, but we'd really rather not be here.
In terms of Seymour's speech that he gave in the House yesterday, he got interrupted a couple of times, which I'm not surprised by, but he made some really fascinating claims that, for me, don't sit right. Claims like having Māori voices in decision-making processes and setting up things to make sure that there's equitable outcomes for Māori in areas that we often see that there aren't equitable outcomes. He pitched those as special rights that Māori get that non-Māori don't. Um, I'm wondering if you'd be able to speak that. Am I? Because I know I suffer from white privilege terribly. I'm very fortunate in that respect. Am I missing something here, or is that pretty much his argument? Because people get treated slightly differently, so they get better outcomes. They're getting special rights.
Well, that's certainly his argument, which has absolutely no evidence attached to it. It might be a feeling that some people feel, but this is his white privilege speaking out too. When it comes to equity in this country, it's Māori that have been disadvantaged since the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. There's no questions about that, and that is reflected in health and education and the justice system. And so, I'm comfortable that in Aotearoa New Zealand, we all have a fair go. We all have opportunities, but we can't lose sight of the impact of colonisation on our country and the impact that it has had on Māori. We need to plan for a future Aotearoa that is about our children and their children's children, to ensure that it reflects a country that they see too, and it's up to our young people, and we hear them now. That they love the treaty, they love being a New Zealand that embraces Te Ao Māori. They're so proud of it, and internationally, it doesn't reflect well on our country when a country that has had some of the best race relations, albeit awkward and difficult at times, that suddenly we're in this position where we're doing harm to our Indigenous people. That's not the New Zealand that I think anyone wants at the moment, and it certainly doesn't help our international reputation.
When you're out on something like the Hikoi, when it passed through here, was that the same sort of feeling that you were getting from those people that were there?
The Wairua, you could see through social media, fantastic social media has been going on throughout the week, reflects it really well. It's passive resistance. That Wairua is positive, it's warm, it is about kotahitanga against a kaupapa that people do not like and are not happy with. But the main thing is that it's uniting New Zealanders, Māori and non-Māori alike, that they're coming together to fight against this legislation. So I'm just so proud of everyone and how they've demonstrated themselves, how they've shared the Toitu Te Tiriti message out there, and it couldn't have come off better. And I hope that passiveness continues through to Tuesday, because it's just so gracious, and that's how people have come together.
Speaking of Tuesday, that's the day that the Hikoi is due to show up at Parliament. Some estimates have put the crowd size at 40 to 50,000 people. It would be the single largest protest this country has ever seen. I don't even know if the grounds of Parliament could hold 50,000 people, to be honest. It's smaller than people realise. But I'm kind of curious as to what the process is for you guys as MPs. Do you go out, you meet people? How much planning is in advance for everything else that's happening around Parliament on the same day? How does it actually work from your perspective?
Yeah, so some of our MPs will be going to the Pōwhiri with Ngāti Toa on Monday night. I'll be joining the Hikoi from Waitangi Park on Tuesday morning and walking with our community to Parliament. Some will greet the Hikoi when it arrives at Parliament. For me personally, I'd rather do the last leg of the Hikoi with the people. It's an opportunity to be together, and to really support those that have done the hard yards right from Te Rerenga Wairua all the way to Wellington. So, it's going to be a special occasion and one to watch.
Any of the government MPs going to be there?
The question was asked of Minister Pōtaka yesterday in the House. He didn't answer the question. That's not unusual for this government. We saw the Prime Minister duck and dive on questioning last week, and then he didn't even have the regard to stay in the House for the Treaty Principles first reading yesterday. That was disappointing, and a real lack of leadership. So I have low expectations that any of them will front on Tuesday. It wouldn't surprise me if David Seymour himself took the opportunity to walk out on the Hikoi because of the narrative that would present. So he would be the one to watch, I think.
Speaking of the narrative from David, he is very good at spinning this with really simplistic arguments. It's about equal rights. Why shouldn't New Zealanders have a say in how the tribunal works? How much of the narrative from yesterday do you think he's lost control of? Because everything I've seen has been all about what happened with the haka, Willie being kicked out. It was all about the reaction from the opposition as opposed to David and his presentation of the bill. So it feels like he's kind of lost that narrative push that he's been able to do so far, with the possible exception of the Herald, because I saw Barry Soper came out today going, well, it was full of hatred and clearly David is the victim here. How much control does David sort of lose when this happens around the narrative of what he's putting forward?
That's part of our political strategy. Is yesterday we took away the platform for him to spread his negative narrative, and it was all about us. I was disappointed in Barry's commentary. That's certainly not what I saw. A haka isn't just an angry demonstration. It was much more than that. I was really proud of all of my colleagues that they were quite restrained. A few of us got told off by the speaker, but as long as your interjections are rare and reasonable, then we went through it okay. But David is losing the narrative on this. The Hikoi has taken away the platform that he would have hoped would be there. But there's nothing better than people power to send a message to this government that they're not happy with the Treaty Principles Bill. They don't want it. It's costing us when it doesn't need to. But I think the biggest loser here is actually Christopher Luxon himself.
The bill's going to go through the Justice Select Committee, which I kind of understand because it ties into the tribunal, which is part of the justice system. What sort of involvement are you expecting the public to have in that process?
I expect that there'll be tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 submissions. On one end, you'll have, the Hobson's Pledge gang whipping up their pro forma contributions. And then you will see quite a large number of submissions come from Te Ao Māori, but Te Ao Pākehā in New Zealand as well. So there will be a lot. I think the select committee will have to make a decision on if they hear every single one, every single person and group that wants to do an oral submission. That would take them a very long time. So I suspect that they'll have to randomly pick a certain amount that they can get through, hear those. They'll do their departmental report, and then it will go forward to a second reading. Where, it hasn't been talked openly that there will be a second reading, but that's part of the parliamentary process. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's a long haul that we'll be going through right through to Matariki next year. So
Oh, God,
at least
that's right.
Matariki is a good time to move on from.
Oh, yeah. Do you have any advice for people who are looking at submitting? One of the things I try and tell people is try and avoid form letters. If you get a million copies of the same thing over and over, you know that it's come from someplace that's pushing a certain narrative, but you're not getting people's perspective. What other advice would you give to people out there who want to make a submission on this?
Yeah, I always say keep your submissions simple. Um, no more than one page, and unless there's a whole need to add a bunch of research in there. Um, consider the like anything, you consider the audience. So when an MP is having to read a bunch of submissions, one page is a reasonable amount to get your points across. Also consider if it's just yourself as an individual, or if it's a group, or that you do both. That's an opportunity to put forward your perspectives. The total number of submissions that are for and against do count with the select committee. So scale was important, and that's particularly what the likes of Hobson's Pledge would largely be focused on. But yeah, like you, Paul, I would avoid templated submissions because they all just get counted as one.
I was talking to Takuta Ferris about a month ago, and he said something that sort of stuck out with me when it comes to the select committee. When you get a majority of feedback in the select committee on one way or another on an issue, he feels it should be thrown out. Essentially, if it's going against what the bill is that's being put forward, or what the select committee is looking into. There's also a feeling that some people have out there that it doesn't actually make a difference because this government is determined to do what it's doing and it's not listening to people. They've rushed things through under urgency. They've minimised select committee processes in the past. Should people lose sight of the fact that this is an important part of the process?
Putting submissions forward is very, very important, and that importance can't be underestimated. If, for example, that there was quite a difference in the number of submissions that were supportive versus against that bill, that would be quite concerning. So I do encourage people to put forward their submissions. But the value of as an MP, I personally value people's contributions. Their thoughts and ideas and their opinions on the work that government is doing. But in opposition, it's just as important that those submissions come through. They support us. They add value to the arguments that we are putting forward. And that the government or the Justice Select Committee actually can't disregard submissions. That people's thoughts are included in all of the reports. They'll be part of history. And, in 10, 20 years' time, we will reflect on this period, just like we did with the foreshore and seabed, and we will not be proud of what New Zealand is going through.
That was actually going to be my last question for you, was how is history going to remember this moment? It's obviously big news at the moment. Everything's going viral, but we're in the heat of it. What do we remember 10 years from now about it?
Yeah. This will go down in history as one of the most destructive pieces of legislation that our Parliament will ever see. I'm not sure if we will see this again. It's whipped up by politics. That's what it will be remembered for. And it won't be successful, but it will be the day that we will look back on and ensure that we don't repeat. Our learnings were on the foreshore and seabed. that is something that we never ever want to explore again. But it will also be remembered for the time where Māori and non-Māori come together to build race relations in this country.
So the Hikoi's there. What time is it on Tuesday that it arrives?
11 o'clock.
Okay, if people want to be involved, if they want to come down, just bowl on up, try and find a car park.
Try and
maybe
find a
take
car
a bike.
Up-to-date information is on the Toitū Te Tiriti website. So they'll do regular updates. So go and look there for the information. They'll also give you good advice on parking, weather, what to bring. But yeah, go and support the kaupapa.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Shanan. It's much appreciated.
Tēnā koe.
Wait, we're still here. It's over. Find another video.